This is Colin once again. What is the third force? Now, there is something called the third force in the realm of psychology, and that was the humanistic psychology that was developed by, actually, it had its roots with Karen Horney and Erich Fromm, but it was championed by Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. The third force, aka humanistic psychology, attempted to speak for a number of individuals, psychological theorists, that did not agree with the first and second force. The first force mainly being Freudian psychoanalysis or psychoanalytical psychology, and the second force being behavioral psychology, whose champion was mainly B.F. Skinner. The humanistic school of thought, or the third force, attempted to understand psychology in areas that they viewed were being neglected by the first and second force, behavioral psychology and psychoanalysis, mainly Freudian. There have been other movements that have, of course, come out since the humanistic movement. Transpersonal psychology is on the move ever since, even around the time of Maslow and even up to now. Some circles refer to transpersonal psychology as the fourth force. But why am I making a video about the third force? This video is not about humanistic psychology. The third force I'm referring to is a movement that has been around for centuries. It's a perspective in religious experience and religious studies that have been woefully underrepresented in our modern day discourse. While debates rage here on the internet and elsewhere regarding religious studies and religious topics, I feel that the religious debates and discussions have been dominated by what could be called the first and second force of religion. The first force is reductionism, mainly championed by radical skeptics, mainly atheists, and a few others, who seek to reduce religion down to carnal, instinctual, basic psychological drives that have no bearing or any real importance, and then it's actually our goal is to grow out of religious convictions and beliefs. This was really first championed by people like Karl Marx, Sigmund Freud, to be really specific, and the late Christopher Hitchens. Richard Dawkins, and to some extent Sam Harris would agree with this perspective. The second force is a force that we are all pretty much familiar with because the majority of people around the world adhere to this particular persuasion. It is the orthodox, organized theistic movement, usually characterized by Abrahamic religions, but can extend to other religions as well, namely Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as they are represented by their usual orthodox, organized, theistic perspectives. This is a force that views the scriptures as pointing to a real reality. In other words, a God that they hope to have a personal relationship with, that they actively pray to on a daily basis, usually, but not always, take their scripture quite literally, and find that the supreme area or dogma is revolving around a holy scripture, which again they take literally, and thus the conflict arises between knowledge that can be gained either in conjunction with said scripture or completely outside of it. They feel like there's a conflict, namely between science and religion. It's no wonder then that the first and second force are always debating each other and arguing with each other. It's also no mistake to find that within both of these forces you have internal squabbling happening. You have members of different theistic faiths arguing with each other about which book is better, the Quran or the Bible, which religion is the truth, Islam or Christianity, and which one should you all submit to. Within the reductionist community, you have variants like Sam Harris, who on one hand is a skeptic, he's a rationalist, a very scientifically minded individual, but he appreciates and has studied with Hindu yogis, Buddhists, and actually thinks that consciousness and the study of consciousness and understanding meditation and a certain non-organized theistic spirituality could be, in fact, attainable. something that the late Christopher Hitchens probably would have said would be utter bullshit. So you have internal squabbles happening, and you have a wide spectrum even within these first and second forces. But again, what is this third force that that I'm talking about in this video? The third force in the religious studies is something that is a perspective that has been around, like I said, for centuries. It is the symbolic or psycho-spiritual perspective. This is a perspective that members of an organized religion can belong to, but also spiritual people, people who may not necessarily be radical atheist skeptics and are not comfortable with saying that they are an orthodox brand of a theistic religion, can adhere to. Members of a theistic religion can belong to this group, but they are distinct in that they do not take Scripture literally. They feel that Scripture of all kinds, whether it's a Scripture of the religion they belong to or others, that they feel that there are psycho-spiritual truths, there are psychological and spiritual truths, universal truths that are obtained by reading the symbols, the deeper levels, the allegory of the Scripture that they are reading. They believe that God, the ultimate reality, is beyond our understanding, and that through our own subjective experiences, intuitive grasps of knowledge, perennial philosophy, we can hope to scratch the surface of the iceberg that is just a little bit above the surface in trying to understand what is this greater reality. People might call them mystics, spiritualists, sages, or crazy, but they are a huge part of our human population, and I dare say are probably in the majority, but they are a silent majority. They don't get the media attention because these individuals who belong to this third force aren't committing violent acts against others. They're not in hostile debates. They're not trying to convert anyone. They are simply trying to understand the ultimate reality by understanding themselves. Because if you know yourself, you know God. This third force has existed for a long time. Their members are from all different religions, but they understand universal truths and universal understandings and values, and they don't seek to abstract anyone or convert anyone. They're not concerned with a debate about science and religion. They are okay with science and religion. They have experienced a harmonization of the two, because by looking at the realm of nature, they find confirmation of their intuitive and spiritual belief in a higher power, something beyond themselves, the unknowable, the unnameable. This is the third force. And so, for subsequent videos, I will be focusing on the theories and perspectives of individuals who, in my opinion, represent this third force. Namely, Carl Gustav Jung and his view of psychology, Jungian analytical psychology, the anthropologist and philosopher Joseph Campbell, Aldous Huxley, author of A Brave New World, but a book that he's not that well known for, The Perennial Philosophy, Huston Smith, the author of The World's Religions, Karen Armstrong, just to name a few, and also the mystic Swedenborg, Emanuel Swedenborg. In my opinion, these are individuals that represent this third force. Myself and others view themselves as being a member of this third force. We do not seek to convert people, to have debates with people over what I would call surface topics, like, who was the real successor to Christianity, James the Just, or who was the first pope supposed to be, Peter or James, because the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Hebrews say James, but the Gospel of Matthew says Peter is the first pope, and is Robert Eisenman's theories accepted by all historians, or is it not? Not everyone agrees with Robert Eisenman, but some people do agree with Robert Eisenman. Textual criticism, the textual transmission of the Bible and the Quran. Is Keith Small right? Is Daniel Wallace right? Is Bart Ehrman right? And what does it really matter? Now, to be clear, at this point, I want to say I do think that these, what I call surface level areas of religious studies, is actually important. It's important to know the textual history of the Bible and the Quran. It's important to discuss the historicity of any religion. And I'm not discounting that. I'm a huge history nerd, and I enjoy the works of Bart Ehrman, Robert Eisenman, Daniel Wallace, the Ehrman Project members. I think that being educated in all of the perspectives about the historicity of a religion and the textual history of a religion's book or books is very important. But I'm making this video because this is a dawn of a new era for me. On this YouTube channel and on my blog, I will probably not be discussing very much the topics of textual history, textual criticism, and the historicity of whether James the Just was the real successor or was it Peter, for an example. It's not because I don't think they're important. It's because I think there are bigger fish to fry. Because, unfortunately, as I said, in our modern discourse and in the media, what is hyped are the two forces, reductionists and the orthodox theistic believers. They have had, for too long now, in our modern discourse, they've been holding the reins. And I think it's time for members of the third force, people who, like myself and other users on the internet and also elsewhere, will have a chance to finally speak our views about what it means to be spiritual or religious, how we perceive Scripture, what is the important elements of Scripture. Is it the literal reading, which clashes with reason and science, or is it the deeper psycho-spiritual meaning, the allegorical meaning, that is the important way of reading texts? That is something that we will be discussing in the near future, and what videos I will be making. So I'm going to be making videos along these lines. Now, does that mean I won't be making any videos in the future about textual history or criticism or about the historicity? No, I probably will occasionally blog or make a video about the subject, about those two subjects, because I think they are important. But I will be departing from what I usually talk about, and will be talking about my newfound theological perspective and what informs me, because through several of my blog posts, and those of you who have read my blog posts have probably noted, I kept saying things like, oh, well, I agree with the perspective of Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, Emanuel Swedenborg, and, perennial philosophy, and a lot of people probably just went, shh, what the hell is he talking about? So I have not done my duty. I have not taken the time to actually describe and talk about what these different theories are. Why do these perspectives inform my outlook on theology, metaphysics, scripture, etc.? So in the near future, I will be doing videos along these lines. So for those of you out there, and you know who you are, who would tag team my videos, try and bring up debates about textual criticism, the Bible and the Quran, is James the Just the real successor, or is it Peter? I will no longer be engaging in those type of discussions. At least I will not be for the majority of the time. 95% of my time will be spent on these new topics. The 5% will be my occasional intellectual regression into some of these other former realms of speculation. This is not me running from something. I just feel like I've stated my opinions on where I stand regarding some of these topics. I have said my piece, and people just want to go around and around in circles to confirm their already established presuppositions and not actually consider the wide spectrum of the study of the topics of textual criticism and history. So, like I've said in past videos, do I encourage people to check out the Ehrman Project and Daniel Wallace's works, which respond to Bart Ehrman in the realm of textual criticism? I do, because I think Daniel Wallace and the Ehrman Project are doing a great job of exposing several arguments made by Bart Ehrman, and are actually showing that Ehrman's views are not the consensus view. And you can quote as many scholars as you want. You can list the credentials and the opinions of a few scholars that may agree with Bart Ehrman or may be on his side of the fence, but someone else can come around and quote scholars that totally disagree with them, and we have solved or proved nothing except that the field of textual criticism has a diverse population. Awesome. And with regards to history, not everyone agrees with Robert Eisenman regarding James the Just and his place in the early Christian community. Does that mean Robert Eisenman's wrong? No. I own all of Robert Eisenman's major works. I think his theories are fantastic. James, the Brother of Jesus, was one of the best theological or religious historical books I have ever read. Yet I can still sit here and go, not every historian of religion agrees with Robert Eisenman. Many conflicting traditions place James, the Brother of Jesus, as being the Bishop of Bishops all the way to a cousin of Jesus. And if you take the New Testament, Peter's the first pope. The siblings of Jesus at the time of his being on the earth thought he was nuts. And it wasn't until after he was gone from the planet, or this reality, that Paul or others called James, along with Peter and John, as the pillars of the church. But historical traditions do place Peter as the first pope. Varying traditions elsewhere say that James had a more central role. What does that prove? Proves that ancient records were just about as diverse as the textual, were incredibly diverse in their opinions. What does that prove for modern day historians of Christianity or other religious movements? They're just as diverse as the science of textual criticism. Wow. So I can quote a few historical scholars or quote a few books. Other people can quote the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Hebrews, and what have we proven? Nothing. We've only proved one thing, that these areas are incredibly diverse. And to be a critical thinker and to educate yourself, you should read the entire spectrum of materials before framing your own argument or saying that you know for certain what is fact. I have to remind myself of this. I'm not saying I'm perfect in this regard. I'm not. But it's something we can all strive for. So I realized that the latter part of this video was, as you can tell, were directed towards a few users who I will not name. But for those users who I did respond to sort of passively regarding textual criticism and history, you need not comment on this video. It's not necessary. Because even if you want to, that makes you feel good about yourself, that you've commented on this video and maybe have said something else. I'm not going to respond to it. So if it makes you feel good to see your comment on below my video, cool. I'm not going to stop you, but I'm not going to respond to it. I'm moving on. I'm moving to this new realm, and I hope a few others will join me. I hope to do more videos, perhaps talking about subjects with Wayman 29, with other people who are interested in Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, Universalism, Swedenborg, and like I said, this third force, if you will, quote unquote, in religious studies. So thank you all for watching. Again, forgive me if I come off as arrogant or in a bad mood. It was not my intent, but it just feels pretty good to be able to move past this sort of dead horse that everyone's been sort of smacking around for quite some time, and to turn on to areas that I am very passionate about, but have only made slight references to in past works, blogs, and videos. So I look forward to giving a full, fresh and full look, spotlight trained and fixed on these other areas that I find really fascinating, and I know I will not be alone in this regard. There are other users on the internet that I know will join me in this endeavor, and I look forward to working with them and collaborating with them and making videos in the future along these topics. Hope you're all doing well, and regardless of who you are and what your background is, I say peace be with you all. Thank you.